evening. I would like to call this regular city council meeting on June 5th, 2023 to order. Can we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Schmischer?
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith? Absent. Councilmember Stein?
Here.
Councilmember Tracy?
Here.
Councilmember Worthington?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here. Let's all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I don't see any citizens request to speak to council on anything that's not on the agenda, so we'll move on to council member announcements. Councilmember Tracy.
Just a quick update that the next community advisory group for the Lincoln Park Cotter Superfund site is third Tuesday as usual. It's June 20th. We've moved our meeting times to 3 p.m. We still meet in hybrid meetings, both in person at the PCC Fremont campus and online. And we should have several updates on the agenda. And one thing that the community has requested through the community advisory group is an update in regard to whether there is any analysis or investigation going on regarding the funds that were used up over the past 5 years. So stay tuned on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, did you have an
I
announcement?
did. I'm struggling with technology. A couple of them. We do have a URA meeting here next Wednesday at 5 p.m. in these chambers, followed by a general government meeting. And one of the subjects that we're going to be talking about is a potential extraterritorial water service ordinance that will allow our water department to more flexibility in how they charge for fees for water taps. And we also had an energy committee meeting this morning. We're just about wrapped up with recommendations. I think that we have maybe one more meeting, and we're planning on presenting those recommendations, or Ryan is, to council August 10th, is that correct?
The general government meeting in August.
In August, the general government meeting in August, thank you. That'll work, which is a little ways away. And then in addition, we also have Carol Lynn Wednesday morning. And so I will be there, and if anybody would care to join me, I'd sure appreciate it.
It's always nice to have another person there, that's for sure.
It is.
And thank you for taking that on. Really appreciate it. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was wondering if the Water Committee had had its first meeting, and if so, if there was a brief readout of it.
Do we have that on our agenda tonight?
We do not tonight. The Water Committee had their first meeting last week, kind of covering some of the basics, and they also reviewed the extraterritorial water ordinance. And then at the next city council meeting, council will have to select a chairman for the Water Committee of the two council members. That's something we neglected to do last time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Also would like to announce that Flashback on Main is Saturday night. First Friday's Friday night, so there's a lot going on this weekend. So I hope we get out there and support our downtown and local businesses. Next, we're going to move on to recognitions and proclamations. And we have a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. Tammy, do you want to come up and talk to us? While we're waiting, I did miss somebody. Councilmember Worthington.
I was just going to tag on to your comments. Is the Canyon Car Club is having their, I think it's their 41st annual car club meeting, or car club show, easy for me to say, at the Abbey Saturday morning. And we're expecting over 300 cars, so please come out and, no, don't kick tires, but come out and look at the pretty cars. So we'd love to have you.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you said that because we already had First Friday last week. Now we got a car show and Flashback on Main. So that's really good. So financial reporting, this is really important that we really are good stewards of our taxpayer money and how it's spent. Do you want to tell us about how that process goes to making us all accountable?
So what the award we received is it's actually from the Government Finance Officers Association. And they have a set of criteria that we must follow and submit to be able to actually receive the award. The finance department works closely with the auditors in preparing the report. All of the numbers, of course, come from our system, and we make sure that the numbers are what they're supposed to be, and we verify everything multiple times. And it's a big team effort from our department and our auditors putting the document together. I think it was 100 and some pages, I think our audit was this past year for 2021. We're in the process of finalizing our 2022. Ryan and I were discussing about how many years the city has received this award. And I know it's back since at least 1996. So it's pretty significant that we continue that on. And, my staff and I have, since I've been here since 2019, we've received it every year since I've been here as well. So that's a good thing. And
that's a wonderful thing to report. I'd just like to read a little bit from that report. It says, the report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. So it's pretty awesome. Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ryan?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Tammy's saying, the audit is a true reflection of our financials every year, and we try our very best to be as transparent as possible. We do that through publishing our P-card statements and all of our transactions at the city council meetings. But this report is that independent verification that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing to be transparent for our citizens and our community. And I just want to thank Tammy and her team for all their hard work and everything they do to make that possible.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's fantastic.
And we couldn't do it. I couldn't do it without our entire staff. So it's great to have them and their knowledge to be able to continue to receive this.
Awesome. It's a top-notch team, and congratulations on your excellent report that reflects well on Canyon City.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, we're ready for our consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Item 7A is to approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting on May 15th, the special meeting on May 8th, which was the retreat, May 9th, Fort Collins program, and May 17th, the Energy Committee. 7B authorizes the mayor to reappoint Gary Clark to the Planning Commission and authorize the city clerk to advertise to fill a vacancy. 7C authorizes the mayor to sign an MOU for the Junior Law Enforcement Academy with Canyon City School District. 7D authorizes the mayor to sign a water service contract for 3371 Adams Avenue. 7E authorizes the city administrator to sign an amendment to bid 722 for Axon dash cams. 7F authorizes the city administrator to sign the first amendment to the Royal Gorge Railroad Crossing Agreement at 11th Street. 7G authorizes the city administrator to sign a MOU with Pueblo Community College for use of Canyon City parking lots. 7H is to award bid 2023 Enterprise Resource Planning to Springbrook in an amount not to exceed $149,835. Staff would ask that this item gets moved to 8B for discussion. We do have members of Springbrook on Zoom, and just a little bit of discussion about the process that went into selecting Springbrook. 7I awards bid 4323 site demolition for 304 South First Street, that's the Skyline Steel property, to Langston Concrete in an amount not to exceed $132,550. 7J awards bid 4623 interactive map to Argus Solutions in an amount not to exceed $7,938. 7K awards bid 4723 community development software to Civic Plus in an amount not to exceed $65,750. Staff would also ask that this gets moved to item 8C. We do have a short demonstration of what that's going to look like and the capabilities that will provide for our citizens. 7L awards bid 4923 co-responder MDT to Telrepco in an amount not to exceed $11,954. 7M authorizes the purchase of police department equipment under state bid with Warrior Kit safety and survival gear. And 7N is to receive and file cash disbursements.
We have several department heads here. I'd like to invite them to come, maybe to expound some things that are on this consent agenda. Let's go ahead and start with Commander Bell. You have a number of items for the police department for our consideration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. We have a couple of things on here. Item C, the Memorandum of Understanding for the Junior Law Enforcement Academy with the Canyon City School District. For the last 10 years, we've been hosting a Junior Law Enforcement Academy in partnership with our school district. And what that academy entails is an invite for middle school and high school age kids to actually partake in a quasi law enforcement academy in which officers from our department actually are the instructors and teach the kids various things about law enforcement to just kind of give them an introduction to the criminal justice system and what it takes to be a police officer. What this memorandum of understanding does is it allows us to be able to accept a grant award for an amount of $2,000, which actually will help to fund our Junior Law Enforcement Academy for this year. In previous years, we've always been able to take money out of a line item for our school resource officers to be able to facilitate us being able to put that particular program on. This grant would allow us to be able to utilize other funds for that. So that's what item C is. I'm going to bypass E because Elijah is going to have a lot more to say about that, but I can stick around for that in case you guys have any additional questions on E. L is also one where Elijah and I would probably have to talk together on, but the co-responder program is one that we are still trying to facilitate getting up and running right now. But one of the things that we have to do is for CJIS compliance as well as for IT security for the city, we have to allow our co-responders to have access to mobile data terminals, which should be able to allow them to access our system while still protecting the sensitive nature that, the sensitive topics that we have to keep in. Item M is the purchase of police department equipment. This is specific equipment for our SWAT team, which we have been training and trying to equip for the last year. Right now, aside from the actual manpower, we've been able to fund our SWAT team development through grant funds. This allows us to be able to spend additional grant funds to purchase what we would consider less lethal options for our SWAT team, specific to the SWAT team, and a shield, which would allow for protection against rifle-rated ammunition. So that's what that's for.
Okay. Are there any questions for Commander Bell on these particular items? And Elijah, let's go ahead and have you enlighten us a little bit more about the dash cams and if there's anything else we need to know about the co-responder MDTs.
Absolutely. Well, good evening. So the bid amendment to bid number 722 for the Axon dash cams, we brought that to council December 6th of 2021 to purchase new dash cam hardware to put into all of the police vehicles. Unfortunately, as we all know, through the last year plus, there were quite a bit of extensive supply chain issues. This one hit us particularly hard because not only were there some supply chain issues in getting the equipment, but we also had some, Axon had some staffing issues getting their team out here to do the install because they're coming out to do the actual installation of the hardware. So it took quite some time for us to actually receive our hardware and get it on the schedule. By the time we did that earlier in the year and we started receiving our hardware, we realized that the mobile routers that are installed into the vehicle with the dash cam were slightly outdated. Unfortunately, as long as it took to get here, they began offering a new version of the cellular router that's installed with these dash cam packages into the fleet vehicles. At the time we placed the order, that was not an option. So what we ended up doing was requesting an amendment to the contract so that we can return our old cellular routers that were purchased under the original agreement. They're 4G capable and not 5G capable, so they're not very future-proof. Axon agreed that that would be acceptable. We can return all 32 units. And in an effort to lessen the impact of the additional cost of the newer technology that we would like to place on the order as well for the 5G routers, we reduced the quantity of vehicles that have dash cams from 32 down to 30. That was quite a few conversations between myself and command staff at the police department and Sergeant Dickens, making sure that every vehicle that was going to be on the road had the dash cam, that every vehicle that needed a dash cam would have one. So not only are we returning 32 of the mobile routers from the original order, but we're returning 2 whole packages, including the cameras. The reduction in cost for returning all of the equipment plus the 2 camera packages came out to be roughly $59,000. We would see that amount come off of the original agreement price over the 5-year term. And then the cost to add 30 of the upgraded 5G capable routers onto the 5-year contract came out roughly a little over $100,000. So there's a bit of a delta there, price difference between the return and the increased technology cost for the newer routers. We do have funding this year under the PD vehicle line item to cover the initial first-year cost for that, and then we would budget appropriately to cover the increased costs in the next 4 years. It should also be noted for that we have not made a payment on it since we have not received the hardware. We have not had the hardware installed in the vehicles. That payment will be made as soon as they are installed and we're in the road. So that pretty much covers the bid amendment for Axon, and Commander Bell did a good job.
Can we just pause? We have a question from Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thanks so much for staying on track of, or staying on top of so many different types of technology for so many different departments that we have across the city. I am curious, which of the 2 police cars don't actually require dash cams? Are there 2 that don't go on the roads, or?
No, so there has been a little bit of a shift in how they're utilizing shared vehicles. So when they shift between which officers have their own take-home vehicle and who's sharing different vehicles, they've rearranged their staff in a way that 30 was going to cover all of the patrol vehicles as well as all of the school resource officers. and the traffic unit as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the dash cams?
Yes,
All right.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So I note that we're getting mobile data terminals for our responders. Are we considering putting mobile dash cams in those vehicles?
At this time, no. There were no anticipations of putting a dash cam into the co-responder vehicle, and it's my understanding there is only one co-responder vehicle.
Only one co-responder vehicle. And that, do you know, is there a requirement to do that, or would that be, this is for law enforcement vehicles. The co-responder can perform law enforcement duties from time to time, as I understand it.
If I can expand on that.
Sure.
So we've kind of switched away from having a law enforcement role in that particular program. I mean, it's attached to the police department. We're working in partnership with Solvista Mental Health in order to provide that program. However, the spirit behind having the dash cams is for those that are actually going to be responding to, in an emergency fashion to calls for service, but also in traffic enforcement, which is really where the meat and potatoes of having those dash cameras really come into play. Right now, the way that the program is currently working is that the co-responder unit wouldn't necessarily need a dash camera because they would be able to respond only at the whim of law enforcement calling them to a particular scene or to a particular call for service. So they would go and actually be viewed as a separate but partnered agency with the police department.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, sir.
All right, any more questions for Elijah or Commander Bell? Okay, I would like to take a moment. Mayor Pro Tem's call button is not working, but I would like, if you wouldn't mind, if each of you press yours, just so I can make sure that everybody else is doing okay.
Okay, I will try that.
Tim, can you do yours one more time? There we go, Ryan's. Okay.
Kathy, did you push yours?
I think I got everyone's. Catherine, I didn't. Do you have one? Okay. This is lawyer. Okay. Well, luckily, Mayor Pro Tem's right next to me. You can just
I
whack
can
me or something.
Raise my hand, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Tracy.
Thank you. I do have questions on several items on the consent agenda. If you would like to let me know how we are going to proceed on that by item or.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's start with your first one, and if it has to do with the department head that's here, let's invite them to come up and participate in that conversation.
My first one is in regard to item 7F, the amendment to the railroad crossing agreement. It's just a minor question, and it looks like it's a proposed relatively minor change in terms of what's happening at that crossing. And I just wondered if there are any businesses impacted by this proposed change. And I'm not sure who might know that.
I can take that. No, I don't believe there's any businesses impacted. Mr. Tezak owns the properties on both sides of the street that are adjacent to those.
Okay, thanks.
Can I have
Yes.
a further question on that one?
Not that one.
I do. And my question is, in our packet, it says the railroad obtained consent from the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. And were we aware of that or a party to that, or?
We were aware of that. That was the process they followed last time, and they came asking to make the change, and we sent them back to the PUC to have the proper authorization before we would approve it.
Great, good. I think this conversation will come up in different guys perhaps later, but, where appropriate, making sure we're involved with decisions the PUC makes is, I think, important for us as a city. Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Before Leo leaves, maybe, are there any questions about the Pueblo Community College MOU for the parking lot? Okay, looks like we're good for that. Councilmember Tracy, what's next on your list?
Thanks. Item 7I, I just had a question about a document attached to that memo. I just, and I may be missing something, it's in regard to the demolition at Skyline Steel. But there, on the first document following the memo, the first chart references bid 2623 for Reynolds Avenue, and I wasn't quite sure if there's a reason that's connected there.
Nope, I copied the bid tab over and reused it and reformatted it and missed changing one title, so.
Okay, so
That was
that
just my
chart
mistake.
is just, leave it alone, forget it. Okay, thanks. And then I have one on 7J, whenever.
Okay.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah.
7J, which is in regard to the bid for an interactive map regarding the dinosaur excavation area. I just wondered if this is something that maybe someday the city will do in-house or develop the ability to do those kinds of things in-house, if you could just address that.
Yes, ma'am. That will be our intention moving forward with projects such as this. With this particular project, we fell under a time constraint for some of the grant funds that we have for the BLM grant that we're using to pay for this. Unfortunately, our in-house staff didn't have enough time to appropriately dedicate to this project on top of his other things he's got going on. So as long as there is enough time allowed, we do anticipate that projects of this nature can be done in-house.
Okay, thanks.
It is pretty exciting. Maybe to expand on that for the public a little bit. Ryan, I mean, I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and Elijah, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about what that project is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the old quarry map developed by Marshall Felch and Ken Carpenter, shows all of the different excavated fossils in that quarry. And the anticipation for this particular project is to create an interactive map that we would place based on a Esri GIS layer. And we would be able to manipulate it and zoom in for the immediate area where all the fossils were discovered. Click on each individual fossil or touch if you have a kiosk or a notepad or something like that, and pull up some different information regarding when that fossil was excavated, what species it belongs to, just a bunch of information regarding to it. So it is quite exciting. There is an outdated version of this running on one touch screen computer at the museum currently. Unfortunately, it was so outdated it has to be completely rebuilt just due to the technology that was used to create it in the first place. So very exciting. Being able to put it online, publish it so that you don't have to be physically present in the museum to see that is also a pretty big leap forward for this.
Yeah, I guess that was my question is, could somebody be at the quarry and pull that up on their phone and be able to access that information?
Yeah, as long as they would be able to communicate with the internet, they can.
That's awesome. Council, are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember Schmischer.
Sorry, just to further expound upon that last point, I think that there's pretty bad service for most cell providers near that particular quarry. Will it be possible to download the map and actually be able to play with it offline if you're up there?
Yeah, you could do that as well. Because it's a
Awesome.
GIS layer, you could download the assets as well.
That's really exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that clarification.
I just had a comment going back to the item on the Skyline Steel demolition, and just wanted to reiterate just that this is being financed through a brownfield grant, and so it's really, is that correct, Ryan? I just want to make sure I'm saying that right.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll be using funding from the Brownfield grants. And Rick Harmon, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about this this is one that you've been working on for a while.
Yeah, I think it's important. I always like to make sure that we say like for the SWAT team, that was from grant money. The dinosaur fossils, that's from grant money. There's
But-
another thing, this is grant money.
Yeah,
that's paying for
not,
this.
not all of the demo will be from grant funds, because the grant can only be used for remediation. So
Okay,
I think most of that remediation has been done, and then after we do demo, there will be some additional remediation that comes from those grant funds. But I'll let Rick talk a little bit more about that.
That's correct, yeah. The building itself has to come down. The Brownfield grant won't pay for demolition unless it's part of an assessment process, but we don't need to take the building down to assess it because it's already been assessed. There will be more assessment after the fact to make sure that there's no further contamination and potential cleanup after that, but it's cleanup that was called for prior to taking the building down. So yeah, there will be more work that goes into it after the building is down. And that will be brownfield money.
and the brownfield money is important because it's a grant for taking a place that is blighted in Canyon City and kind of dragging us down and allowing us to transform it into something that can be viable.
That's exactly
and
right.
really something that can be a benefit to this community. And this Skyline Steel property is basically beachfront property. It's prime property that really is not being utilized to its fullest capacity.
And it's a
But-
property that the EPA is waiting for us to take care of because they really like this property. The EPA is really fond of what's happening in Canyon City in general. And I and Stan Bullis are going to be presenting to the Brownfields Conference next Monday, or Tuesday, the 12th, whatever day that is. So they're really watching this in the entire community to see what happens in this development in particular. But brownfield grants in general, and Canyon City is really kind of leading the way on a lot of this in the state. It's a tool that we are using to really show investors that we are invested in this process as well, and that we're willing to clean up properties that we know are contaminated and look into properties that may be contaminated in order to take risk away from investors. So there's a lot of effort going into brownfield grants right now.
And this is the largest brownfield grant that has been awarded west of the Mississippi, I believe, that Canyon City has.
At the time, yes,
At the
yes.
time.
There was another one just awarded in Colorado. I can't remember who got that for $800,000,
Awesome.
but we were the first.
Councilmember Schmischer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's so exciting to see forward progress on Skyline Steel and the idea that those buildings will come down and will come down safely. Do we have a timeline on when that may be completed?
What did we give them, 6 months? 60 days. 60 days to complete it, and that should be starting pretty soon, really. It's coming down.
And is there a planned timeline for what we'll do once it is down? Are you envisioning putting out another RFP when we do have a clean site? Or what do you see as the next steps to really moving that development of our wonderful beachfront property forward?
We are still working with Acorn Petroleum because we offered them a land swap. They understand the process. They know what we're doing. We've had some more communication with them in the last couple of months that really, they fully understand what we want, and they fully understand that the position of the city and the direction that that whole site is going, and they fully understand that a fuel refilling station doesn't fit in there any longer. So we're working with them, trying to offer them a land swap and work with them to move. But we have to also take care of the contamination that's there now, so that'll come next. So we'll take care of the site, tear the buildings down, then we'll clean it up, and in the process, we'll continue to work with Acorn to try to facilitate that movement of the site. And then we have to build a road.
Is the cleanup part of the 60 days, or does that come after?
That comes after.
And is that another RFP process? How long do we envision the cleanup
That's a
taking?
process that would be managed through Stantec, through the through the Brownfield grant. That would not be a Canyon City contract.
Yeah, so that contract's already been awarded to Stantec, so.
Yeah.
Do we have a rough sense of what kind of timeline we're looking at for the cleanup?
I would, we haven't talked specifically about timing on it, but I'm sure once, I know they're waiting for the building to come down as well. And once we do that, I'm sure they'll get a contractor in there. So I would think by the end of the year, we'll have a clean site.
Okay, thank you.
So part of that, of creating it to a place that where it can be used to its full potential, is that it had contamination, it had these old buildings, it had asbestos, it did not have sewer or water to it.
Correct.
And most developers are not gonna take on those hurdles and those costly things. And so
Yeah.
it's using this grant money and some of our city money to take away all of those barriers so that it can be put on a silver platter for those future RFPs.
Yeah, and it's basically removing uncertainty and risk. Risk is very expensive for investors. And if you can remove that risk, it'll only make that a lot easier of a development to promote. There's always surprises in property. You know, I think we probably have it figured out pretty well that there won't be, but quite honestly, we don't know what's below the building right now either. But yeah, the whole idea is to remove that level of risk or that uncertainty for a developer and make it available. And when you're a community like us competing with, quite honestly, larger communities, it's harder for us to compete. So the Brownfield grant really makes it capable, makes us more viable as a community to develop.
It helps level the playing field.
Helps level the playing field significantly. Even a phase one that might only cost $5,000 can help level the playing field because it removes uncertainty or it identifies what might be necessary to take care of. So there's a lot of pluses to the brownfields.
Awesome, thank you. Are there any other questions for Rick or anyone else on the consent agenda? If there are no more questions for the consent agenda. Yes, well, that will be in the motion. To make a motion to approve the consent agenda would be, oh, Councilmember Schmisher, are you ready to do that for items?
I would be happy to.
H and K?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the amendment of moving items 7H and 7K to be our new
8B and 8C.
8B and 8C.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff, for being here. Ryan, let's move on to the administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. You have the written reports, some things that did not make it into the written reports. The splash pad, lines were repaired last week. The concrete was poured last week and cured over the weekend. It was painted today. We're hoping that we can have it tested tomorrow and hopefully open by Wednesday.
Yes, please tell the whole world when it's ready and open, because we need this splash pad.
We-
Although it's cold and rainy,
It's
so-
splashing.
Yeah.
We're okay.
It is a little rainy out there. Let's see, moving on to the Clock Tower project. We have a virtual open house tomorrow. That's from 4 to 5. And then we will be following up later this month with a joint planning and city council meeting. That will be our vision meeting for June 21st. So there will be some additional work going forward with the Clock Tower planning process. Right now, it looks like we have a very light agenda for July 3rd, and we know several city council members are going to be out. So at this point, I believe we're going to cancel the July 3rd city council meeting and the July 5th general government meeting. And then the other item I talked about earlier, the next city council meeting will be selecting a chairman for the water committee.
Okay.
Happy to take any questions about the written report.
Well, I do have a question, and Leo, maybe this would be addressed to you too. On your report, it talks about the Royal Gorge Route Railroad parking lot reconfiguration. I was wondering if we're able to look a little bit more into the other requests and conversations that we recently had with the owner, Mark Greska, about maybe some speed bumps and reconfiguring that kind of southwest parking lot.
Yeah, they submitted a request to do some gates and different things to help control traffic there. We actually had to deny the first request based on the maintenance and easement agreement that was part of the original sale, so they've kind of reconfigured some of that and have some different plans for how they can better control their off-hour access into their private parking lots, so we're working with them on that. We also drafted up some conceptual designs that we've started to circulate a little bit about ways that we could add some additional parking and try to do some traffic calming in that area. So we've kind of, mostly those have been circulated internally at this point. We need to get back with Mark and share those ideas with him.
Awesome, thank you, I really appreciate that. Councilmember Schmisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Administrator Stevens, I wonder if you could give us an update on the Red Canyon Trail Committee.
Yeah, the Red Trail Canyon Committee, we're ready to do that. We want to host that before one of the upcoming city council meetings. It will probably be the meeting in July. The one coming up here later in June, we've got some folks that are going to be out of town during that meeting, so it will probably be the July meeting that we host that. It'd be July 17th.
So essentially, host an open house before the city council meeting to let folks express interest in potentially applying to be part of that committee?
Correct. So we'll get that scheduled and start promoting that open house so people, the public, general public is aware of it and can plan to attend that.
And then would the application period be open for a month after that? And then we would do interviews and selection?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Administrator Stevens, on your report, we see sections outlined in yellow, and those are, I assume, the changes from last time?
Those are the changes from last time.
Thank you
yes, sir.
very much for that. That makes it a lot easier to review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to item 8B, and this is for awarding the bid 2023 to Enterprise Resource Planning for Spring Brick, an amount not to exceed $149,835.
I will turn this over to Elijah and Tammy.
Tammy, do you want to go ahead and join us up at the table? This is a big moment for you.
The city's been using American Data Group, ADG, since the mid-90s, and we identified several years ago that we needed to make an upgrade to improve our reporting capabilities and be able to act on data and make decisions that are based on data. This is a project that's been going on for a while to try and identify an ERP system, and I'll pass it over to Elijah to talk about what that process looked like.
Good evening again. So as Administrator Stevens said, it has been a lengthy ongoing project for us to identify a replacement for that original software that we've been using. I think we officially began this process well over a year ago, just trying to figure out what information we could gather that was out there, what systems, commercial off-the-shelf systems that we could take a look at existed out in the wild and what would work for us. So before we start, I just want to say it's been a long project, and we're very pleased to be here and where we're at today, showing you what we've decided and what we came up with. So bid 2023 and the following bid, on the next item, I'll separate them. They kind of began as the same project. The ERP project, as we coined it, or Enterprise Resource Planning, the idea was to get a single platform software that would reduce the different varying amounts of software we had throughout the city and kind of replace them with one platform so that we didn't have so many different softwares and different vendors and workflows, processes. The main item that we wanted to look at when replacing this legacy software was finance and accounting, procurement, utility billing, and some of that financial software workflows. As Ryan said, our current software is American Data Group. That is something that we utilize for both finance internally and utility billing. That's what is forward-facing to the customer for them to pay utility bills as well, and their partner in a payment processor. As well as finance, we also have a couple other departments that are utilizing that legacy software. The building department is using it to store permit data and contractor licensing. We have the municipal court is currently utilizing it for some of their case information, very rudimentary, but they are utilizing it to store some of that data. And I wanted to point out that when we began this procedure of looking for a unified software, we were looking to include HR and payroll as well. Paylocity is the current vendor that we utilize for that, and it is something that we kind of removed from this project, and I have another slide later on that explains why, but just wanted to point out that we are not utilizing ADG for HR and payroll functions anymore. Throughout the years of utilizing that old system, we've identified a few different areas that has caused a bit of a headache for Tammy and some other departments. One of the biggest being redundant data entry and the different areas of the software where you have to manually key in data from multiple different sections in the software. Becomes an issue when you can't take it from one area and port it into the next with the same information. I mean, that can lead to data errors and Tammy spending long hours verifying all the information that is in there, and leads to difficult reporting as well. There's not a very streamlined capability in our current software to pull reports and merge them in a pleasing way and get good data out of them. It becomes a very manual process and labor-intensive task to do so. Another area of concern with our current setup is the lack of automatic workflow approvals. For instance, in our procurement and our payment request vouchers, that's a very manual process. It's something that's filled out in a paper form and hand-delivered to different personnel throughout the city and signed off with, ink on pen and hand-delivered where it goes for approval. So a lot of efficiencies that can be gained by replacing this older software. And that leads into other things such as different grant and project fund managements. It leads into that reporting thing again. Lot of different manual processes. So this thing starts working. There we go. What we attempted to solve was all the issues that I previously went over, and like I said, we wanted to replace that with a single a single platform vendor. That would allow us to establish workflows from the start of a procedure, whether that be accounting, whether that be something involved in the Public Works Department, from start to finish. Something that was electronic, something that was automated, something we could track and report on. It would also reduce the manual and redundant data entry issues that were previously mentioned and increase our reporting capabilities. And another goal that we had out of this project, not only to increase our reporting capability, but we wanted to increase our transparency to you, to the citizens, to internal staff, just to make sure that if we move forward with a new software, that it's able to accurately represent what we're doing internally to those other parties as well, and especially the public, and just simplify all of our processes. The project began with a request for information back in May, at the end of May of '22. We released that RFI on BidNet and closed it in July 8th. We did have multiple responses to that. 4 of those responses to the RFI included quite a bit of information for us to begin our data gathering. From the closing date of the RFI, we began to request demonstrations from the different vendors that responded to it. We called them, had meetings, they came down in person. Tammy and I have spent dozens and dozens of hours in demonstrations for software, and dozens more on the phone, different Zoom meetings. So throughout the fall of '22, we primarily were in a data gathering for those respondents to the RFI. Eventually, once we had the conversations that we had, we decided that we'd had enough information to put out an actual request for proposal, something for formal proposals to get us the software that we were looking for. So we released the RFP for our enterprise resource planning software on December 28th of 2022, closing in January. And we had four qualifying responses to that RFP, 3 of which had also responded to our request for information. It was not a requirement that these vendors had to have responded to both. Just something I wanted to point out. We had some interested vendors that really gave us a lot of information and worked with us quite extensively. Those 4 vendors, we reached out to them again. We did more software demos, more meetings, more conversations, and just continued to see if any of their solutions would fit into our processes and make it work for us. Throughout that second round of demonstrations and trying to fit all the pieces together, we identified a problem. And that unfortunate problem for us was that our original vision of a single platform vendor was not going to work for us. There were a lot of different areas of the software where one vendor excelled and another vendor excelled in a separate area. It is very difficult to replace sophisticated software across an entire city for all of the different workflows that we have. So we came to the realization that although the original vision was a single vendor, we were going to require more than one. So what we did with this particular bid, 2023, we reduced the responses to that RFP down to the financial components and the utility billing components, because that was the main component throughout the responses. And we compared the 4 vendors that had responded to that based on their utility billing and their financial software capabilities. We also included sales and use tax in that evaluation. Here I wanted to point out that because we're looking at the financial and the utility billing software for this, we are going to still need to look at community development, licensing and permitting software. That is something that is later on the agenda right after this one. Municipal court management software, since they are a current ADG customer, we will have to replace that as well. That's something that is coming soon to a council meeting. And HR and payroll, like I mentioned, we're using Paylocity at the moment. We are currently evaluating alternatives to that software, and if we need to leave Paylocity and get a different one. That is not part of this bid process. The benefit to having a single vendor is the ability for all of the different modules or pieces of the software to communicate with one another. That was why we began looking for that single platform. What I've learned, particularly through this process, is that that is not always necessary. There are certain processes, such as file imports and exports, that do not require integrations from, say, a permitting module and a finance module. It is just as easy for us to export payments from one system and import them into the GL or the financial accounting system for another. So it's kind of we had to let go of the idea of integrating everything and just making sure that it did actually fit together, kind of like different jigsaw pieces in a puzzle. Even though it's not the same company that manufactures the software, they will work cohesively in one system. And that's one of the things that took us the longest, was making sure the different softwares we were identifying were going to fit together like that, and they were going to work for us. So we believe that we found a solution that will cohesively work with every piece of software we're choosing. Throughout this bid process, we recommended Springbrook for the award of bid number 2023. They were the lowest bidder by quite a ways, and it fit within the budget that we had allocated for this project. They also had the most functionality out of all the different vendors that we were looking at for the accounting and utility billing, which is pretty rare that you find the lowest bidder that also has the most functionality. So we were very excited to see that. There were a few areas that they were the most flexible in working with us on, things such as the Urban Renewal Authority not required to be a separate entity that we would have had to duplicate all of our payments to that company for. There were a couple other vendors that would have required us to pay again for them as a different municipality, essentially. So they're very dedicated to working with municipalities of this size, and we believe that they'll fit our needs the best. We had quite a few demonstrations with other staff members, with a lot of Tammy's staff as well, and this Springbrook software is the one that we got the most buy-in from staff. It's very user-friendly. Everybody seemed to agree that this would be the correct way forward for this system. We have also invited Dana from Springbrook. She should be on Zoom. I don't know if she has anything that she wants to say, but other than that, I am available for any questions that you may have.
Hello, Dana. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Hi. Thank you so much for allowing me to attend tonight. I always feel honored when I get invited to council meetings, so very excited to be here. Here to answer any questions, but before that, just a little bit about Springbrook. We've been around for 37 years, and during that 37 years, we've only done public sector governments and utilities. So that's our number one focus. So we're excited to move forward with Cannon City. And we have currently over 2,800 municipalities across the United States that we work with. So we're excited to, like I said, move forward with Cannon City in this ERP process.
Excellent. Thank you for being here tonight. We do have some questions from council. We'll start with Councilmember Tracy and then move on to Schmischer.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have several questions. I wanted to be sure that I understood correctly. Are you, and this first question maybe applies to both of these issues on the agenda, both what was 7H and what was 7K, and that is this pretty much off-the-shelf software, or are there modifications being requested that will be made in order to fit our business flow?
So one of the requirements we had through the RFP process was to have a vendor deliver us an off-the-shelf software that we could customize within certain bounds to make it better work for us. We did not want something that was built entirely customized for us. When you do that, you get into issues of maintenance and ongoing terms with that company. So it is primarily off-the-shelf, but Springbrook and the other company that for the next portion of this will work extensively with us, making sure that it is customized within their bounds to fit our needs.
Having worked on a software project back in the late 90s, I know that, and in that case, working for the State Department of Human Services, we used an already designed software from another state, New Hampshire, I think it was, and modified it. At least the concept was to modify it for Colorado's workflow. 4.5 years later, it still didn't work that well. And so I was just curious how much modification there needs to be, and also just whether there were any issues around, we're going to have to change our processes to fit the software. Are there any times where that was an issue?
No, so I should clarify, the modification itself would not be of the software or the coding for the actual software. That is an off-the-shelf product.
Okay.
The modification was more around the workflows and the procedures that we utilize to fit within what they have designed and what they've used in numerous municipalities. And Tammy might be able to speak to this a little bit more, but I do believe it fits exactly the processes we utilize.
And with that, there are some of the processes that will need to change, but they are good changes. ADG was set up to mirror existing processes that weren't necessarily the way the software was designed to be used. We will be implementing Springbrook the way it is designed to be used and change our processes accordingly to make sure the software is going to work correctly. They are also able to help us with our sales tax imports from the state, and so that is huge, because we do like to still be able to track by area and by industry where, you know, where those sales tax dollars are coming from. And so that's huge. And so that is a slight change on their side, but it will be handled with imports and exports, and we do imports right now to ADG.
Okay. I have two more questions. Should I just go ahead with that? Or?
Well, let's let Amy, Councilmember Schmisher, and then we'll do Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, and it all kind of relates to this, so,
Yeah,
okay.
so we'll all have a chance.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. Thanks so much for all of the hard work and time that you guys have clearly put into this process. It sounds like it's taken dozens, if not more, hours, but it's a really important decision, so just really appreciate the thoroughness and time that you've dedicated to it. My question is, how will this new system change our utility billing, both the backroom processing as well as if there will be any impact or any changes that consumers may notice?
The biggest change that I anticipate that the consumers are going to see is that their account numbers may change. So that's going to be, you know, something huge. We'll see if we can keep the account numbers, but that's going to have, when we go through our planning of the conversion of the data, we'll know more about that at that point. They'll still have functionality to go online and pay their bills, and so they'll also be able to see more information online about their bills, where right now I don't think they have that expanded the expanded ability to see more information. So I think that's huge, and if we go ahead and implement everything that we are planning on, or that we discussed, they can possibly request service to be done as well. So if they're trying to, if they have a leak and they want a leak check, there is a point where we can allow the customer to go online through their account and try to get something scheduled. So that's a feature that we don't have right now. So there's benefits.
Will it eventually allow us for customers to opt to go paperless and things like that, or?
And we already have actually that option, and so that will still be offered.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. That, just to comment on that if you're going to be changing account numbers, don't forget to create a Rosetta Stone, labeled "Keep Forever," "Do Not Throw Away," that can reside in somebody's file, so that someday, maybe a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 20 years from now, somebody can go back and cross-reference the different information that we've got right now. My question is, how many users are going to be on this system?
So
Approximately.
Yeah, I mean, approximately 50, roughly. I mean, there's
50, okay.
the entire department staff for finance. All of our department heads will utilize it for budgeting purposes. So there's quite a few other members throughout the city that utilize it to look up accounting information and what budget is available in certain line items. So we don't anticipate any growth as to what we're seeing now versus our current software, but staying the same.
Okay, and the reason I ask that question is because the real question I want to ask is, I did not see anything in here about training for the users. What training is going to be required, and how will training needs be met?
So we chose to adopt the train the trainer method. We will have department heads, finance staff, myself, attend official training from Springbrook and make sure that we understand how the system works in its entirety, and then we will pass that knowledge down to the line level staff.
Did I miss that in the contract, that there's that's called out somewhere?
There should be training included. I don't know if it was actually itemized as a separate line item or cost, but Dana, I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit more, but training should be included.
Yep, so under the professional services, that is what we consider our training. So it's all kind of looped into one big professional services, whether it's the implementation and the training hours.
Thank you.
So then we have Councilmember Tracy and then Worthington next.
Thanks. I wonder if you could say, well, wait till they're available. I wonder if you could say a little bit about, like you mentioned conversion a little bit ago, legacy system conversion, and whether you anticipate issues with that. Sometimes it's really hard to map from a system that's from 20-some years ago to a new system. So if you can just say a little bit about what that process might look like, and then I have a couple other quick ones.
Absolutely. That is something that we anticipate working extensively with Springbrook on, getting a current copy of our data in the database format that it's in, supplying that data to Springbrook's developers, having them parse through it, find out what table cells should go into which for their software. It's not something that we want to rush. This implementation is going to take some time, so we're going to have maybe what you would call a soft data import and test it and make sure that that conversion works and then expand that from there.
I know sometimes you have to have more discussion than you think about what this current data means as opposed to what this new system might think it means, and so there's a lot to that. And then I wondered, you didn't say, is there a robust testing process once you get to that point in the process?
There is. There is.
Okay. And then I just had a real concrete question on our electronic packet, page 96. There's mention of Selectron, and I wasn't sure what Selectron was. It's somewhere in the documentation.
Let me see if I can pull the documentation up.
Yeah,
And
page
see
96
Electron
in our
terms and
packet.
services, or terms and conditions.
It's the next document after our contract, I think. That's not quite correct, I'm sorry. A couple of documents later.
Dana, does that have something to do with the card reader and the payment processing?
Yes. So that is who we utilize as our PayPad and the card reader, like Elijah just said. So that's who is the processor. So that name is going to be on the credit card reader in your office.
Thank you.
Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you. I think this is a compliment in the sense that my first red flag came up was when the bid was so much lower than everybody else's. And having gone through bid systems and so forth, you always sort of want to make sure everything is going well. And it sounds as if I feel more and more confident every time I've heard you. And so I think it's a compliment that you're going to be getting everything that you can for the price that we're going to pay. So I'm very proud of that and stuff. And I will also say, having worked for a company that switched account numbers, quite a few of them were lost. And it took a long time to finally find those. And then you try to back bill, and it's not fun. So I just thought that's one of the things to make sure that things go right as much as they can and expect to have hiccups.
When we took a step back from trying to incorporate everything into one software vendor, that's really when the door opened up for Springbrook. They didn't necessarily have some of the community development software that we were looking for. And, when we did that, we were able to find that additional functionality, and we got that additional buy-in. We had some strong vendors that we were looking at that could do a little bit more, but when we started changing that course, that really opened the door, and very happy that it did to allow us to take this different path.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. This question may have been answered, but I was also looking at the Selectron document, and there on page, I believe it's 97, for those that are following along. At the top of the page, it said maintenance and support services. It says you acknowledge and agree that Selectron Technologies has no obligation to furnish any maintenance or support services with respect to the software. But we're talking about credit card readers here, is that correct? And
Correct.
that we're not talking about the Springbrook software.
Correct. The support for the software comes directly from Springbrook.
Okay, and then there's a contract addendum. Is that Selectron also that follows the Selectron addendum? And
The-
that would be on page 100
The contract addendum is the addendum to the contract with Springbrook itself.
with Springbrook.
Yes.
Okay. And on that, it says that we're modifying the language, the ownership language of our contract. And it says that consultant reserves, meaning Springbrook, I believe, reserves all rights, title, and interest in and to the subscription service and any associated software and documentation. And so I guess my question is, if we were to next year go to a different software vendor, does that mean any manuals that we had that described how to use this software for our data would have to go back to Springbrook?
No, I wouldn't classify the manuals that we have for the processes and how to utilize this in our workflows as something that Springbrook would own. Any of our customer data, which in my opinion, that would fall under our customer data, we would retain ownership of.
Okay, and I'll have a further question on that, but my concern is that it does say associated software and documentation that belongs to them and not to us. And so that's, so if we receive a manual from Springbrook, it does not belong to us, and that's my concern.
The way I read that is more along the lines of documentation as to how their software was developed. I think that they put that type of language in these agreements quite often so that they don't have to release information on how their software was customized or how it was written on the back end, or they're not letting out any of their industry secrets and how they design their software. And quite honestly, if we have manuals and documentation that we have developed, that wouldn't be documentation that's supplied by Springbrook either.
Okay. Okay, I think I can go along with that. Then on page 101 of that same document, it says the following terms relating, this is number 3, the following terms relating to software licensee shall be added to the agreement. And it says that that we will use this solely for our internal business purposes. Okay, and yet we're going to be using this for billing for the public. And so that's my question revolves around that term, internal business purposes, because internal to me is a different thing than when we have a water department and they're selling water and we're billing for that and things like that. And so that's my concern, is that this seems to prohibit the public use of this software, have a public-facing portion of this software.
So, again, I think that's something that can be up to interpretation quite often in a document such as this.
Well, frankly, if it's open to interpretation in a contract, that's a problem.
Right.
Is how I look at it. And we may need some advice from our attorney here, but my concern is that we are restricting our use for internal business purposes only. And if we obviously do not intend to use it that way if we're going to be billing citizens.
Right. Dana, would you speak a little bit to that on the use of utility billing software designed for internal business purposes that we're exposing to the public for the use case of utility billing?
Yeah, so when we say I'm trying to get like the exact wording. When we say for internal business purposes, that is basically the behind the scenes information. So having your employees log in, whether it's Tammy and her team or anything like that, for the internal purposes. And then our Civic Pay platform is the external platform. So it's not necessarily the Springbrook portion of it, it is our Civic Pay platform that is the external platform going towards the public for those utility billing purposes. Does that answer?
Well, I still have my concern because this is a contract term that we've got here, and it says we're granted a limited, non-exclusive, non-transferable right to access and use the software, implement, configure, and permit authorized users to access and use the software during the subscription period solely for it and its affiliates' internal business purposes. And I don't like that clause because we do not intend to use it solely for internal business purposes.
It looks like Catherine has something to say.
Yeah, so I'm not concerned with that language. It is, the utility is our business and we are operating it and it is internal. Just because there's an outward facing element of the software doesn't change that in my mind. The public doesn't have the right to go take that software and then give it to somebody else. They're using it solely in their connection with us. Okay. And so I think that I'm comfortable with that language being what it is.
Okay.
So.
Then, and right in that same paragraph, it says any terms, and it references the city may purchase the services by submitting an order form or order form. And it goes on to say any terms and conditions contained in any quote, invoice, purchase order, or order form that are inconsistent with the terms and conditions of this agreement will be deemed stricken. And so if that means that if there are inconsistent terms in the order form, they will be stricken.
Correct.
Is that, I have that correct? Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. And the other, I have several things, but another one says the city is responsible for their acts and omissions relating to the agreement as though those were of the city. And there is referring to authorized users. The city is responsible for authorized users' acts and omissions relating to the agreement as though they were those of the city. City acknowledges and agrees the use of the subscription services may require the city to enter into separate licenses with entities other than consultants for third-party services. And I guess that's the card reader reference there. But are we, does that waive any of our sovereign immunity? That we hold authorized, that we will be responsible for perhaps authorized user misuse of the software?
I don't think so, because I'm not terribly concerned about it because we would be responsible anyway. So it's kind of just stating what the law is. And it's not, it says we're responsible. I hate negotiating a contract in public a little bit. So, but it doesn't say, you'll pay X or there's any damages or anything like that that would trigger like a Tabor issue. So I'm okay with that language.
Okay. And then on that same page, I have another one where it says restriction on use. And it says except as otherwise expressly provided, that we won't sublicense, sell, resell, transfer, assign, distribute, et cetera, or make any commercial use of, outsource, use on a timeshare or service bureau basis, or use in an application service provider environment. And what does that mean? What is an application service provider environment or a managed service provider environment?
So a managed service provider environment would be one where we would be acting as a technical support for another agency, wherein we would purchase the software for the agency or on their behalf and then license that agency and provide support to them instead of us utilizing it for our own city purposes.
Okay. Okay, I'm good with that. Then on the next page, under data usage and storage, it talks about our 500 gigabytes of storage, and it says that when the service is nearing its expiration date or otherwise terminated, consultant will initiate its data retention process, including the deletion of the city data from their systems. They're directly controlled systems. And my question is kind of one of backup. So the data that we store in their cloud, will we have an independent backup of that data?
That is not something that we will be taking an independent backup of. That is something that's part of the professional services under the agreement that they maintain. If we were to terminate this contract with them, we would request a copy of the backup before they purge. And
Is requesting a copy within their data retention processes?
it would fall under the data ownership, that they would have to provide our own data back to us. So, and Dana, you can speak more to the retention on how you handle the actual retention on the back end, but I don't know if you have a set period of time after contract termination to supply us with our data that you could speak to.
Yep, so if you don't give us a set date, we typically purge the data 30 days after the end of the contract. Some people request it to be held longer or shorter. That's completely up to you at the termination, but you will get a complete backup of your data on the date that you request it. So if you need it 3 days before your contract ends, if you need it 30 days or whenever you need your data, we would provide a complete backup of all of your data for you.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions on this one.
We'll turn the time over now to Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I had one follow-up question for Dana with regard to Exhibit B, the response and resolution goals. With regard to the resolution goal timelines, particularly for critical, but for all of the different situations, are those your average response times, or are those kind of worst-case scenarios? I'm particularly concerned with critical if it were to be down for 72 hours as kind of an average. So if you could speak a little bit more to that, that would be great. Thank you.
Of course. So those are our definite worst case scenarios. We're not averaging 72 hours for critical errors. We typically try and respond within an hour. So I like to say for those critical times, when we discuss that response goal, that's going to be more in line with the resolution goal as well. We just like to keep the longer terms to kind of cover ourselves if something else were to happen.
Understood. Thank you so much.
All right, I have a question. It's not as technical, but I remember it's been years upon years, as council members come and go, that there's been many requests for reports or certain data to be retrieved for us and given to us. And the answer is often like, well, okay, but how important is this report? Because our staff is literally going to have to data mine that individually on their own and type up a special report every single time. We don't have the software that can do this for us. So my question is, does this software allow us to get multiple kinds of reports and data retrieving that we need with just clicks?
Extensively. There's quite a bit of reporting capability within this software, and that is one of the larger reasons we chose Springbrook as the recommended award.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, I would like to entertain a motion to award the bid 2023 for item 8B. Councilmember Dennehy?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we pass 8B 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And also, I would suggest a friendly amendment that we authorize the city administrator to sign the contract. Please.
And the city administrator to sign the contract.
All right, I'll call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher.
Aye.
Stein.
Aye.
Tracy.
Aye.
Worthington.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Elijah and Tammy, for your extensive work on this. And Dana, thank you for being here to answer questions. We always really appreciate when we can have those that we're entering contract in to be present. That means a lot. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We are ready to move on to item 8C now, and this is to award bid 4723 for community development software to Civic Plus in an amount not to exceed $65,750. So we'll come back to you again, Elijah.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll spare you all the gritty details of the beginning of this project, since this is a similar project and it started in the same ways for ERP. So this particular bid, 4723, is only for the community development portion, and by community development, we are looking into permitting, licensing, business licenses, engineering permits, building permits, code enforcement functions as well. So, as stated earlier, ADG is currently utilized by the building department, and that's only for the permit data. There's actually no electronic permit filing currently. So those other departments I just mentioned are using manual processes. There's currently no software or electronic solution for them to accomplish their work. Because of that, it can be very difficult for those departments and the different personnel to manage. One of the things that we're trying to accomplish in this is transparency between staff members and different departments. So for somebody such as planning and zoning to be able to look into a project in the building department and see where it's at or what step it's on without having to engage with a staff member directly is very beneficial, and that works from the top down for every department. The goal of a community development software of this nature would be to put everything in a centralized location, share data openly internally between our own staff members so that we can increase our efficiency in communication between those departments. And that includes, processes such as inspections and keeping records, workflows in whether they be in parent-child relationships from one department to the next, something that we've really dove pretty deep on trying to accomplish throughout this software. All of the departments that I mentioned would be included in the software we have recommended for award this evening. Something that is very exciting, so we don't have to leave anybody out when we're moving forward. Again, it reduces our manual data entry and our redundancies and those workflows that are utilizing manual processes currently. Same RFI and RFP. The reason I wanted to mention that again is because during the time the RFI and the RFP were out, we were requesting information on community development software as well as part of that platform. So we did, again, quite extensive data gathering on this particular version or portion of the software as well. When we decided to reduce the functionality of the ERP and compare it just based on its financial capabilities and utility billing, we released another RFP that included only community development and permitting and licensing. That was released April 19th, closed May 3rd of this year. We had 5 responses, one of which was also a respondent in the previous 2 requests. So once again, we set aside some time to demo the software from the respondents to this RFP that were different than what we'd seen from the previous RFP. One thing that we're looking for out of the new community development software is a completely online workflow, start to finish. Something that we can provide online capabilities not only internally for our staff, but for the citizens, contractors, anybody who needs to put in for a permit, print a permit, pay for their permit online. I think that's something that's been requested for quite some time, something we have not been able to offer the citizens. So it's really exciting to be at this point where, moving forward, we would be able to. Giving all of the departments kind of their own buy-in to manage their own processes and not having to rely on other staff or other personnel to gather information for them. Again, huge time saver, building efficiencies all over the place. Once again, the reporting capability out of this would be very extensive and also would help the city in its transparency with where we're at on certain projects for citizen portal and citizen interaction within our permitting and licensing. One thing I wanted to point out with this particular Civic Plus platform is that it has a native integration with SeeClickFix. And if you'll remember, SeeClickFix is the citizen reporting tool we utilize for code complaints and different issues that citizens see throughout the city. They can pull up a mobile application on their phone or log in online and report that to the city. SeeClickFix was purchased by Civic Plus a while back, and because they are the owner of that platform, they've developed some pretty good integrations between their permitting and licensing module and the SeeClickFix software itself. That was one of the large reasons we decided to choose Civic Plus as the recommended award. We would not have to change our citizen reporting tool or the public reporting tool. We recommend award Civic Plus for bid number 4723. Once again, they were the lowest bidder with the most functionality. We've had some pretty good luck on these last two. That happened again with Civic Plus. So once again, we spent numerous hours in demos and meetings and conversations with staff. We have the most buy-in from this particular platform from staff. Patrick has sat in with us. Kathy Olsch, a building official, sat in and extensively demoed this software to make sure it was going to work for the processes they use, and they both seemed quite excited to move forward with it. So,
before you move on to the short demo, there's a couple of other things regarding this platform. Civic Plus is also the provider of our website, and Civic Plus, or MuniCode, is our codifier for our municipal code. So those integrations also play into, especially the MuniCode, plays into this platform as well. So
absolutely, thank you for mentioning that. It is one of those benefits to be able to pull up the code in the field and the language that's associated with it for on-site personnel or inspectors. I've invited Tim Koschel, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, Tim, and Colleen Burke from Civic Plus to kind of give us a little bit of a demonstration on more of the citizen-facing functionality of this software, because it's something that we as a city have really never had in the past, and I think it's really exciting and something that you definitely want to see moving forward for this. So, Tim, I will let you take it away.
All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you. And so I'm the tech guy here. Colleen is your representative. So I'll approach this in three ways. First, I'm just going to show a few slides just to set some context for those of you who weren't in the demonstrations, and elaborate on the modules, features, integrations that will be a part of this solution. And then we will do two other things, which is to look at what your customers will be able to interact with as it relates to permits, planning, licensing from their mobile portal. And then the third part is we'll look at what your internal staff members will see every day. And I'll touch on some of those elements that you were really important to you during the demonstration and qualification process. So again, thank you for the opportunity to visit this evening, and thank you for your continued participation with Civic Plus. As you mentioned, we do provide your website, MuniCode, and your SeeClickFix applications. The goal at Civic Plus is to enhance the experience that you and your customers have together. We feel if we can do our part in the software arena, that it creates quite a bit of trust. You mentioned earlier removing barriers, removing risk, and this is that thing. Give the customer a good experience connected to your back office system. Again, this represents the whole of what Civic Plus is engaged with. We have a lot of solutions, And we continue to enhance our integrations between solutions. So you're exactly right. The permitting and code software is directly related to the SeaClick Fix application. It's directly related to website. It has a tight integration with your code of ordinances. And we'll continue to extend those integrations across the platform. This particular solution has currently 5 modules. You are going to be working with permitting, planning, license, and the code enforcement module. They are all tied together. They're all interrelated. They all reference the same central land management system. A couple of key attributes. This is completely hardware agnostic. It will operate on any device type, desktop, laptops, tablets, phones. That's for your clients and for your internal staff. So mobility, absolutely, 100%. Unlimited users, unlimited use, no data storage caps, no file size limits, because the bulk of what we typically do in permitting and planning obviously is very intensive in terms of documents. We're going to set up your software. We're going to configure it to your needs. We're going to convert your ADG data, and we're going to train your users on how to administer and use the system. And then you're already very familiar with our customer service approach from our other products. These are just some glimpses of features that are included within the software. I'm going to highlight these in just a moment. We have a lot of integrations that we're currently working with. We're going to consume your GIS content. We're going to give not only your inspectors access to your code of ordinance out in the field from their mobile device, but all of their codes from the ICC, building, trade, fire, property maintenance. We have an integrated credit card processing system. We're going to talk about how to go paperless, and one of those is getting rid of the digital, making everything a digital plan instead of paper. And we have an integration to Bluebeam Review to give your planners that freedom. And then, as was mentioned, the SeaClick Fix integration. So let's think about how we go from your website as a customer. That could be a design professional, a contractor, a resident, a developer, to interact. So you've all the necessary plugins, right? The website's constructed with the widgets, with the apply for. What do we do in this solution? We simply backlink to the already available entry points. And so that's easy. We're going to provide directory pages. So an interested resident or contractor can come to a directory of all application types. They can find checklists. They can find details about the project. So you'll have a directory for each module. So there'll be a directory for permits, for planning and zoning, for all of your license practices. I think it's pretty intuitive what permitting and planning is all about. Just to expand, the licensing module is about renewables. It's anything that's recurrent. It could be a registration, permit, or license. So you have a lot of freedom to expand this module to automate the intake and renewal of licenses and permits. So the direct way forward here for the customer is to obtain a login. And so it's very simple to obtain if they don't already have one. Provide first name, last name, email address. The system auto creates a customer portal. So what you're seeing on this screen is what your customers are able to access from any device type. They'll be able to not just manage one module application, but many. So this means that if I'm a contractor and I've pulled a permit for a home, I could name all of my subs. I could name my architect, engineer, surveyor, the homeowner. Everyone has full visibility to the permit activity and can interact back and forth with you from this portal. So they'll be able to manage their permits. All of their SeaClick Fix complaints flow right through the same resident portal. Their inspections, they can auto manage their renewables, whether it's a business license, a subscription, a short-term rental, and they'll also be able to manage all of their payments. So anytime there's a payment to be made across the module, the customer will be auto updated. They can come and find that transaction in the cart, or they can come over here and make a payment. They don't leave this portal, and it's the same portal that they would have made application, request inspections, print out their permit, print out their license, and also renew. So very, very simple. As was mentioned earlier, related to the code enforcement module, your C-click fix complaint that the resident makes goes directly into your back office system and alerts the code enforcement officer. So everything that we're suggesting in permitting, planning, license, and code enforcement has a customer-facing portal that makes it simple and easy, very transparent, for the client to work without even having to come in to City Hall. So what it looks like for you is, and what I'm going to do is refresh my screen and log in as a city colleague. There's a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of functionality as was said, but let's just hit the high points, right? So what this means, you asked an earlier question about reports. Some of it's just a login, right? Just log into the software. You have unlimited users and know how are we doing as a city across all of our license practices, permits, code enforcement. So this becomes the 30,000-foot view, an ability to just drive into that reporting. You'll know where all of your staff members are working that day. Staff members that are out in the field working off of their, maybe they're doing inspections for license, for permit, for code enforcement, can work directly off of their mobile device, whether or not they have a cellular connection. So if they have a cell connection, great, but if they don't, no worries, because we have an offline inspection app, which gives them complete freedom. So a lot of visibility on main dashboard, my dashboard, and then every module has the same type of concept, but even more granular. So it's going to be very simple for each department to understand, where am I managing online applications? Where do I have inspections I need to deal with? Where am I getting messages from the customers related to my permits? And then every module, all four, have a custom workflow and routing component to make sure that this digital record gets passed around to the right reviewers to make the process very simple. So just to step back from a moment, one of the key attributes is centralized data. Absolutely. So we'll consume your GIS content. The software will hold all of your parcel records. So anyone at any time can come to a property record like I'm doing now and look at all of the attributes for property occupancy. And the thing that'll be most important, why people come here most of the time, is what have we done in the past from A to G? It'll be parked here, all of your permits, all of your planning projects, your renewables. Anyone can answer a question about what we've done in permits, what certificates have been issued, where do we have C-click fix complaints, where do we have code enforcement actions, what planning and zoning projects have we dealt with, what variances have been approved or denied, what licenses. I think you get the idea. Not only is this in a parcel record, it goes all the way down to building and suite records. So very extensive property management. Just to show you a single record, to give you some sense of this, this is a permit record. Everything I need to manage this is in one space. So I would have been able to detail my property, my structure, name my contractors, manage all of my inspections and related inspections. I can relate multiple contacts to the project, and if I relate them here and they want an online portal, they can interact with this project space. Dealing with all of your fees, so a tie-in, I'm going to touch on the interaction between Springbrook in a moment, but we'll have defined all of your fees. They'll auto-calculate, it'll handle all of the transactions, cash, check, credit card, and then we can pass those transactions off to Springbrook. The system will auto-create all of your documentation, permit placards, license documents, code enforcement documents, as well as give you a document repository to store up all of your site plans, other supporting documents to the project area. Again, no limits there. You'll notice the iconology to the top. It's going to make sure that we're performing the proper actions related to the parcel, which can always be linked out here. For routing, everything about the system has to do with, let's make sure we get this project into the right hands, whether it's an individual, department, or group. And so this just manages the custom workflow, keeps everybody on track, and gives the customer 100% transparency to what's going on. So every module is designed in a very similar way with obvious differences in terms of key functionality. A couple of other key attributes is invoicing. As I mentioned, the system will auto-create the invoices, and this is to what your team earlier related to Springbrook mentioned, is your transactional details in this software can be exported in the manner that's required for Springbrook cash receipts to import. And if that structure ever changes, you just let Civic Plus know, and we'll amend this export. Reporting. Reporting is built into every module and feature. See reports here in projects, see reports here in permit. We commingle all of the reports into this area. We will bring forward tons of reports that we've seen over our history. We'll custom create anything that you need, and you can create any report output that you want. Comes out as PDF, CSV, HTML, and you can bulk print custom notices. The admin area is full control by your team. So if you ever need to add a new permit, new workflow, amend a fee, add a custom document, you certainly can do that. And then lastly, SQL advanced reporting means we have a base reporting system that 95% of the users will find full value every day. But there's going to be that really specific data point you want to mine. We absolutely allow you to do that without constraints in your own software. So I'm going to pause comment and then pass it back for questions.
That was an awesome presentation. Thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciated being able to see that.
My pleasure.
We'll start with questions from Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Tim. I do appreciate the presentation, and by the way, I do appreciate the work our staff has done on, reviewing and evaluating all these programs. Notwithstanding my suspicious eye about contracts, but thank you for that. Tim,
highly suspicious.
my question, I guess my question is, and maybe this is for staff too. This looks pretty comprehensive. Is this so? Do I understand it that a citizen can use this to apply for a permit for perhaps a fence or something like that? Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's not only internal to the city what we're doing with this software with all of the different bells and whistles we've got here, really, but this is something citizens can use really almost in their daily lives to manage their city type business. And the only other question I had, Tim, was. You're not by chance moonlighting as a blues guitarist somewhere, are you?
Well, it might be better suited for me some days. I don't know. It's either that or Santa Claus. Go figure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have similar questions that I had in regard to the other bid, but first let me ask just, I wasn't sure what under the city clerk's operations, what's included or what is planned to be included in this. Business licensing, I think, right, would be one. Are we going to try to build anything in regarding city elections, for example, candidate filings and campaign finance reports, things like that?
Probably not for this. This would be more of the liquor licensing will go in there, though, which will help us tremendously, and the business licensing. No, the other part wouldn't go with this type of format.
Okay, because it's helpful. I know candidates who run for state level office and county commissioner and so forth have to file under the state automated system, and it gives the public a lot of information. So I just wondered if that was a possibility. And then my other questions are just more general questions, kind of what I asked before. How much modification is expected to be needed for this system and legacy system conversion testing processes?
Absolutely. It's a very similar answer as well. There's going to be an extensive testing process once the data is ingested from ADG, and it's a minimal set of data since it is only building permits. But they're going to take that data, massage it, put it into their system, give it back in a format that's readable for us so that we can verify it's actually working. And as regarding customization, it's going to be the same answer again. We're looking for something that's pre-built, something that is proven and utilized in many municipalities and different jurisdictions. But just using our data to customize the workflows we have between departments.
Does part of that customization relate to what's in our municipal code? In other words, do deadlines get built in? Is there like tickler systems for staff to follow up on things? And so
Yes.
they have to match what's in our code, I assume, for that
Absolutely, yeah, and because they are also the codifier in Muni Code, that helps a lot with them making sure that they can build those into the system when we start implementation.
Thanks.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think that this is a question, though City Administrator Stevens can correct me if I'm wrong. I just want to clarify that business licensing is only related to businesses that are currently required to have licenses. We're not looking to use this to expand to broader business licenses as has been raised with council in the past, but has not been approved.
Correct. So this is for our existing licenses. When we discussed business licensing previously, there was questions about how would we track them and how, what systems would be in place for that. This does give us a path towards that if needed. But right now, this is only for the existing business licensing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just so excited that we are moving out of the 1990s. And this is going to be a whole nother level of customer service and government efficiency. And just also we've touched base on how grant money is being used for so many of the things that we've approved tonight. And both of these softwares are also being paid for by the ARPA funds that the city received from the federal government. And so we wanted to kind of choose some legacy projects, and this is another one that's going to carry us forward to really helping us provide the necessities for our community. And it's awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, we're very excited about these two.
Yeah, you should be. It's very fun. All right, well, let's approve this. This is item 8C for bid 4723. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a motion that we award bid 4723 to Civic Plus in an amount not to exceed $65,750 and authorize the city administrator to sign the agreement with Civic Plus.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmischer?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, council. Thank you, Tim and Colleen, and thank you, staff, especially Elijah, and all of you that spent so many hours on this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all
Super
very
exciting.
much.
Yes. And we are now going to open up a public hearing for item 9A. And this is for the first reading and adoption by title only of Resolution 9, Series of 2023, entitled, "A Resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, approving a special review use regarding a recreational use for Planet Fitness." Patrick Mulready, our city planner. We'd love to hear from you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. This evening, we are here to consider a request by an applicant, a requested application by MT Studio LLC for approval of a special review use to locate a Planet Fitness in the space vacated by the Beals Department Store at 127 Justice Center Drive. Planet Fitness is considered a recreation facility in the city's Unified Development Code, and as such, requires special review use approval in the GC General Commercial District. This request is presented to you this evening as Resolution 9, Series of 2023. So the subject property is a 5.33 acre parcel located at the southwest corner of US Highway 50 and Justice Center Road, and is part of a planned shopping center. 2 additional lots make up this shopping center as well. Originally annexed to the city in 1996, the shopping center dates from 2004, although improvements to the site were constructed as part of the shopping center development originally. Last year, one of the largest original tenants in this space, Beals, closed operations. The space has been vacant for approximately 1 year. The applicant seeks to fill that vacant space with a Planet Fitness. The reason the public hearing is required is that in the city's Unified Development Code, recreational facility is designated as a special review use, which requires a public hearing before both Planning Commission and City Council. Special review uses are described in section 17.10.030 of the Unified Development Code as a type of discretionary use under zoning in which certain aspects of the use may potentially cause conflicts with surrounding land uses and may therefore need additional conditions imposed upon them to mitigate these conflicts, or if the conflicts are too significant, the use itself can be denied as part of a public hearing. Recreational facility is categorized as a special review use because of how it is defined in the Unified Development Code. It encompasses uses such as playgrounds, tennis courts, golf courses, racquetball and handball courts, skating rinks, swimming pools, fitness centers, and spas, and it may also have ancillary retail and restaurant uses attached to it. All of these various uses will have different peak demand times for their uses, and therefore varying times for varying parking demand associated with them. Compounding this issue, the amount of parking at the shopping center at 127 Justice Center Road is fixed and therefore must be shared. As part of an analysis of the special review use, it is necessary to see how many internal uses are proposed with this Planet Fitness facility. In addition to a reception area, the facility will have 5 other internal land use areas, 3 of which, the vast majority of the space, pertain to workout equipment. The main workout space, the 30-minute circuit training area, the functional training area, and the remaining spaces include tanning beds and massage rooms, as well as bathroom and locker room space. Fully 2/3 of the space is devoted to gym equipment and workout facilities, which means there is not a wide variety of internal uses. Thus, it is not anticipated there will be a wide variation in parking demand. The project narrative provided by the applicant states that the peak demand times for Planet Fitness will be from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. before and after traditional work times. These peak times offset the peak operational times of existing retail and office uses within the shopping center and are thus not anticipated to create any internal parking conflicts. Now, special review uses have 3 criteria for approval as found in section 17.10.030B of the Unified Development Code. Those criteria include 1, that it complies with all requirements imposed by Chapter 1710 pertaining to discretionary use zoning questions. 2, that it is consistent with the purpose of the Unified Development Code generally. And 3, that it is designed to be compatible with surrounding uses and the area where it's situated. In Section 3 of the project summary report, which was attached to your agendas, there is an extensive analysis of how this request addresses each of these criteria. Although I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you have on the specifics of the SRU analysis for the project summary, for the sake of brevity, staff has found that the proposed Planet Fitness recreational facility is consistent with the 3 criteria applied to special review uses, and that the project can be considered for approval. So with that, as of 5/24/2023, and in fact, as of today, I should update that this was the slide I originally presented to Planning Commission, staff has received no phone call, mail, or emails concerning this proposal. Public notice requirements concerning the public hearing before Planning Commission and City Council were met in the time frame required by the Unified Development Code. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on May 24th and unanimously recommended approval of the special review use to Council. Therefore, staff and the Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the use by special review request to allow Planet Fitness to locate at the shopping center at 127 Justice Center Road by the adoption of Resolution 9, Series of 2023. That would conclude the staff presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that Council may have. Also present to speak on behalf of this application, I saw him online, was Mike Twiss from MT Studio LLC.
Hello, Mike. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us about Planet Fitness coming into Canyon City?
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. This is actually not Mike Twist. Mike is our architect. This is Vince Love. I'm the owner. Mike is on the East Coast, so given the time change, he asked that that I fill in for him. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're the owners of the Planet Fitness in Pueblo and are excited to open this Planet Fitness in Canyon City.
Thank you for being here tonight. Are there any questions from the council? Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks. I have a couple. One is there any consideration of putting a pool in?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, not zero probability.
Got it. I know. We just lost our community pool, as you might know.
Okay.
The other question I have for staff is just in regard to, once we pass this resolution, does that then go into, the language go into a permit that allows anything that's in that definition in our code for recreational facility?
So with the adoption of the resolution, it officially grants permission for this use to go in at this location. That becomes searchable as part of our GIS system online. One of the things that we're hoping for with the community development software is that that functionality will be available for the public to pull up and look at as well.
But it will, there's nothing in the, another way to ask my question, I guess, is there's nothing in the definition of recreational facility that would not be permitted then for Planet Fitness if this is approved?
Well, the definition includes all of this smorgasbord of possibilities. So if you grant a recreational use approval at this location, and let's say in a few years Planet Fitness goes away and another recreational service provider comes in, they will have that land use approval. It goes with the land.
Right.
So if they wanted to modify that internally, the special review use would allow for them to do that internally.
Right. And for even this current owner, they could, if they chose to, add in some of these other things that are allowed as time goes along, like sales or small restaurant, or I'm just speaking theoretically, of course. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks so much for joining us. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about your planned timeline and just about what your plans are for the facility. Thanks.
Sure. We have a near final set of building plans that Mike will be submitting to the city probably in the next week or so. And then depending on the actual plan review process, which I presume is probably about a 4 to 6 week process, we will be ready to start construction upon review. We have a contractor that's ready to go, so probably maybe a couple months, depending on the plan review process, we would be starting construction, and it's usually approximately 8 to 12 week process to get open. So ideally, we would be able to be open sometime in the fourth quarter and get the gym open in kind of November, maybe September, October, November timeframe.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And thanks as always, Patrick. Really appreciate your presentations.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stein.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for addressing council tonight. I was just wondering if there has been any consideration, Patrick, about the parking for the movie theater in the 5 to 8 p.m. time frame. Is that, do you think that might be an issue? Like if there's a movie that's, you know, a really popular movie?
So again, from their project narrative, what they're stating is that the peak demand times that they are anticipating will be Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, 5 to 8 a.m. and 5 to 8 p.m. New movies tend to come out over the weekends, and so based upon their narrative, these will not be conflicting peak demand times for parking. Right now, the property is quite overparked, and there is in fact available parking behind the building as well, kind of along the 4 Mile Creek side of the property. In fact, the owner of the movie theater approached us, I think in late 2021 or early 2022, about wanting to potentially put in an outdoor drive-in theater back there. And we had some conversations about this idea. There was, lots of parking discussed, and they provided a parking demand analysis as well. So we're fairly confident that the availability of parking that's out there now, including this, is not going to create a conflict even with high demand for movies on a Friday or Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I would just add from our experience, and I think Planet Fitness has well over 2,000 fitness centers in the United States, but from the 3 that we own, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays are, I guess, busy, but progressively less busy. People come in after they cheat on their diets on the weekends, and they come in Monday, Tuesday, and then it kind of tails off throughout the week, and the weekends are actually fairly quiet, and so are Friday nights. So we wouldn't anticipate any concerns with parking.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? If not, I'd like to entertain, I don't see anyone in our live audience. Is there anyone on our online audience that may wish to address council? Okay, we don't have that, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and now we'll call for a motion to pass this upon first reading. Councilmember Schmischer.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we pass Resolution 9, Series of 2023 on first reading.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmischer?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
The motion has passed upon first reading. Congratulations, Planet Fitness. It's going to be exciting.
Point of
Yes.
order, as a resolution, I don't believe there is a second reading.
Oh, okay.
So it's adopted.
So it is adopted.
We are good.
Great.
Congratulations.
Great, thank you very much.
Happy to have Planet
Thank you.
Fitness here.
Hope we see you all there.
Yes, after my
Thank
weekend
you.
binge, for sure.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Great, thank you.
All right, it is time to move on to item 10B. No, we're on 10A, sorry. This is the first reading and adoption by title only of Resolution 7, Series 2023, entitled, "A Resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, condemning all Ku Klux Klan-related activities during a short-lived but appalling period of history in the city of Canyon City." I would like to read for the public what was written in the summary in the agenda of the motivation for putting this resolution together. It says, Canyon City has long grappled with the history of the Ku Klux Klan's presence in the city. Even though the KKK's activities in Canyon City were short-lived from 1924 to 1928, the effects of those activities are long-lasting, and the stigma related to that time period are still brought up today. Recent community discussion, both at the City Council meeting and subsequent meetings hosted in town with various community agencies, have contributed to the creation of this resolution. The purpose of Resolution 7 is not to try to erase the history of what happened nearly 100 years ago, but to acknowledge the past with a promise to do better in the future. Resolution 7 is about who we aspire to be as a community, and to equally recognize that Canyon City also had an anti-Klan movement, which was formed in honor of this date just passing on May 25th, 1925, by the Constitutional Liberty Party of Fremont County. The Royal Gorge Regional Museum and History Center will provide a copy of Resolution 7, 2023, with all archive and informational requests related to the Ku Klux Klan. I'd like to make a side note that for our museum, the number one request our museum gets for archives has to do with Ku Klux Klan materials, which is really sad. With our 150 years of incredible things that Canyon City has accomplished and done, that's the number one request that comes from our archives. And we really want to make it a strong message that that period of history is not who we are today, that we are a community that embraces diversity, embraces people who are different than us, and if we don't agree or understand, that we have opportunities and we take those opportunities to learn more about those who come into our community. And I also want to make it loud and clear that for those who continually to post the picture, which I know is going to happen after this meeting tonight, of the Ku Klux Klan on the Ferris wheel in Canyon City, that was a publicity stunt that they had put together during their time in Canyon City. And unfortunately, that publicity stunt is still plaguing us to this day. And so I would like to say that even when there's archive requests, that if that picture shows up online or on social media, if that comes across, our thing, if we could just, there's no comment that needs to be made, but maybe just a document of that resolution in a reply, so that we can have a continued message that that is not who Canyon City is anymore. As we read the resolution, it's important to recognize that the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, it was across the entire state of the United States. It was in every single state, all 50 states, there were chapters, and it was all throughout Colorado as well. So this is not something unique that Canyon City had this presence. It was very, very common in that time, unfortunately. I probably will have some more to say, but I think we have other council members that would like to have some things to say. And if it's okay, I'd also like to read that resolution aloud today, and we can all participate in doing that. We'll start with Council Member Stein.
So you want me to read this, or do you want a question?
Well, it's up to you. Do you want to read it first and then talk about it, or would you like to?
Well, I just had one second
Sure.
question. And the biggest question that I had was, what the community groups that we met with, what their feedback was. It's kind of, I agree with the spirit of it, but when you say that you aspire or you endeavor to create something, how are we going to do that? And do we have a plan to do that? Because if you look at our census numbers from 2022, we have a ways to go. This is something we really need to aspire to and work at, because diversity is something that makes any organization better. And that is something that's worth aspiring to. But I was just curious about what the community groups had to say about this, and if they had a plan, or if they had commented on that. Ryan?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to stay for all of the one session that I know that Mayor Smith was at. We did have some additional conversations with the school district, and they were, I don't know if excited is the right word, but they were encouraged that the city was taking this on, and they often feel that they kind of fighting this battle by themselves, and to have another governmental agency kind of step up was very important to them. And this was sent to the superintendent to get his feedback, and he was very appreciative and encouraging of this resolution.
I attended the Green Thumb Initiative is implementing an initiative for inclusion and just diversity and just a better understanding of how we can accomplish that in our community. There was a pretty large gathering there. We had actually a pretty extensive conversation about this resolution. It created a lot of conversation, and they were very encouraged and pleased, and also recognition that things still happen today, even though we're aspiring this, that things not just in Canyon City, but across this entire nation, as we read every day in the newspaper, things happen, and that we do have resources to turn people to, we do have listening ears, we do have work that will always need to be done for the rest of forever to create a community that shows respect for all of humanity. We also spoke with FEDC as well. We're looking for some grant money to help them find ways to be able to encourage more diversity for some of our companies where, for example, a lot of our engineers are from different ethnicities, and some of our doctors are from different ethnicities oftentimes, but they may not feel comfortable coming to Canyon City because we don't have their people here, or the things that they shop for at the grocery store that fit their diet are not in our grocery stores. And so there's a grant to maybe find out ways that we can make that to be more inclusive around. So there's a lot more conversations happening, and obviously a lot more that needs to be done.
And I just want to point out that the session that the Green Thumb Initiative had several different community agencies there. Sol Vista, Starpoint, I think there were a few, I can't remember if there's somebody from the hospital, but there were quite a few other agencies there for that session.
Right, and from that conversation, it talked a lot about putting things into historical context. And so, for example, at the Florence Museum, the KKK was there as well. They had some memorabilia that was out on display, and it wasn't put into a historical context. And so now they are changing that, and they're making those improvements. And so there's lots of little things that are happening to do better. Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just agree with much of what's already been said. I think it's good to look at this resolution from the point of view that the whereas clauses really to a great extent are about history here, which, kind of, as we said in the memo, I think appalling in many ways and regrettable and so forth, but it is about history. And then when we look in the now therefore be it resolved section of it, it's really more action-oriented for today and into the future. And I think it's just really important that we not just pass this resolution tonight, but then take that as a stepping forward to find ways to work with the community, whether that means, it doesn't have to be anything big and formal, but maybe an informal task force that includes the schools and the DOC and other community agencies to just figure out, well, what are the things we need to do to really live by this resolution. So I just think it's important that we look at ways to be proactive about this and not just pass a resolution and say, oh, this is who we are, if we're not acting in that way in a very active and regular way into the future.
We also have, for the minorities that we are in Canyon City, they're doing an amazing job of being advocates for change and being amazing leaders in our community. And I hope that a resolution like this shows that we have their backs and it empowers our community. If there is something that happens that might be prejudicial, that it empowers people to lead out in speaking truth and for a better treatment of our fellow citizens. Councilmember Smisher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the museum in particular for all of the hard work that they've done on all of our history, but in particular in pulling together some of the background research and information for this. I also wanted to follow up with regard to a point that Councilwoman Tracy made. Are the meetings that the Green Thumb Initiative has had, are those ongoing and something that the city is continuing to feed into? Or is that kind of a one-off just to talk about this particular resolution?
My impression is that it'll be a series of meetings. I've only attended one. I've only been invited to one. I don't know if they've had another one since.
So it may be worthwhile reaching out to see if the city can have a regular invitation to those, both to underscore the importance that the city places on diversity and on kind of the now therefore be it resolved section of this, of who we want to be and of what we're aspiring towards. I don't know if that would be an appropriate action for Administrator Stevens or yourself. I'm not entirely sure how the invitations have been coming, but would certainly welcome kind of the city's ongoing participation in that dialogue.
Okay, definitely. I did forward Jenny this resolution, letting her know that it was passing, or it was going to be voted on tonight, and I can follow up to make sure that there's still an invitation that'll be extended. So thank you for that. Would like to thank Lisa. She did do, our director of the museum, she did do a lot of research. I've been down there twice now looking through archives. She did more digging to find more archives so it could really, really get a grasp on what that history really was here in Canyon City. But also want to recognize that there was a gentleman that was here in the audience. Unfortunately, this meeting has been very long. He lost his resolve, but did want to call out Mark Van Bryan, who actually had done quite a bit of research and documentation, and a lot of this resolution actually came from his compilation of what he had done. And so I'll give him a phone call tomorrow and thank him for that. If we're ready, we'll go ahead and read the resolution, if that's okay. I'll read the title and then I'll pass on to you, Amy, to start with the first whereas. So this is the title, a resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, condemning all Ku Klux Klan-related activities during a short-lived but appalling period of history in the City of Canyon City.
Whereas, in 2022, Canyon City celebrated its 150th anniversary, highlighting our rich history of geology, paleontology, mining, agriculture, outdoor recreation, tourism, and close-knit community. As the city prepares to launch into our next 150 years, we want to address a short-lived but appalling period of history when the Ku Klux Klan was in existence in Canyon City. This time period in history does not define who Canyon City was overall, nor who we are today.
During the 1920s, whereas during the 1920s, the presence of the Ku Klux Klan was found across the United States. The state of Colorado had the largest and most influential Klan following of any state west of the Mississippi River. Canyon City's Klan Clavern was organized in January of 1924 and died out in 1928.
Whereas in Canyon City, the local Klan's prejudices were aimed at the new construction of the Holy Cross Abbey and the growing presence of Southern European immigrants. Today, the historic Holy Cross Abbey buildings and grounds are recognized as a valuable cultural resource by our residents with a deep desire to preserve its beautiful heritage while educating the people about the full extent of its history.
Whereas, for slightly under a 4-year period, the Klan ran Canyon City's banks, government, and had their own newspaper called the Daily American. The Klan took credit for passing bonds to build a new high school, elementary school, and water bond issues to extend the water mains to East Canyon. Crosses were burned in Catholic yards. Klan members marched in parades in full regalia, boycotted Catholic businesses, and pressured Protestant business owners to fire Catholic employees.
Whereas on May 25th, 1925, the newly formed Constitutional Liberty League Party of Fremont County announced its purpose to combat the Klan. At that point in history, it was the largest ever political rally in Fremont County, with 1,000 people attending. By 1926, the League Party boasted 2,100 members in Canyon City and Florence, and the Klan began a period of decline. Anti-Klan movements in Canyon City were led by Harry F. Bowen, J.W. Foster, and prominent U.S. Congressman Guy U. Hardy, publisher and owner of the Canyon City Daily Record.
Whereas on June 1st, 1928, the Grand Dragon Fred Arnold died. His death, combined with a number of Klan leadership scandals across the state, led to the end of the Ku Klux Klan influence on Colorado.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of Canyon City. 1, the City of Canyon City denounces the acts from this period of prejudice and hate. This does not represent the collective goodwill of the people of Canyon City.
2, the City of Canyon City endeavors to create a community of citizens in which everyone feels welcome and strives to live in peace and harmony with each other, regardless of race, color, ethnicity, religion, culture, sexual orientation, age, national origin, gender, disability, education, socioeconomic status, ability level, political affiliation, or any other difference. This resolution shall be provided with all archive and information requests related to the Ku Klux Klan.
3, in honor of the city's anti-Klan movement formed on May 25, 1925, we declare Canyon City's recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human race as the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Dated this 5th day of June, 2023.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for being those leaders to lead out and speaking out, and for defining who we are and moving on into the future. If there's any more comments, we're welcome to have them. We will vote on this resolution. Usually resolutions are just signed by the mayor after they pass, but this one, upon voting, we have it so that every single council member can sign. I'd like to invite us to all take a moment to sign it after its passage.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 7, condemning all Ku Klux Klan-related activities during a short-lived but appalling period of history in the city of Canyon City.
A second motion?
Is there any discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Aye.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stein.
Aye.
Councilmember Tracy.
Aye.
Councilmember Worthington.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
This motion, this resolution passes unanimously. Indeed, we do declare Canyon City the inherent dignity of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human race as a foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. I'd like to invite each of you to come up and sign up here if you will. Come on up.
We'll just do it right here.
Cindy, would you mind, well, if we just stand back here and taking a picture, if that's okay?
Okay.
You can sign whenever you want. Ryan, would you like to join us? Is that yours?
That's yours.
All right, let's all gather.
Should we hold up the resolution?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now ready for item 10B. This is the second reading and adoption by title only of Ordinance 4, Series of 2023, and this is concerning the municipal code for the abatement of dangerous buildings.
This is a second reading. We've not received any additional public comments. We actually have not received any public comment on this at all. Staff would recommend passing on second reading.
Okay, Councilmember Tracy.
I move we approve Ordinance 4, Series of 2023 on second reading.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Aye.
Schmischer.
Aye.
Stein.
Aye.
Tracy.
Aye.
Worthington.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
Excellent. It passes on second reading. And now we are ready to continue this meeting yet some more, but an executive session. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, would you like to get us started in that
I
process?
will. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the city council enter into executive sessions for the following purposes. Executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E regarding lease of city property in the Royal Gorge Park.
All right. So we need to, it's been moved. Now we need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
All right, we will be going into an executive session now. And where will we be meeting at, Ryan?
We will be in the antechambers.